All right, everyone. Welcome to our interview with Grace Ann Post. She's a facilitator and educator for Summit West School and the By Design program. And she also has a wellness company that she runs called Willow in Time Wellness. So we're going to dig into homeschooling. We're going to dig into some of the cool herbal oils, all that fun stuff that she does. I met Grace Ann because we switched over to Summit West. I chose Summit West as the facilitator for my kids for school this year. I really liked their approach. I liked how it was parent led. I liked the freedoms. When I spoke with Elizabeth, who works there as well, she really clearly explained to me how to be liberated from my idea of what the school system needs to look like and what education needs to look like. And since I've had the opportunity to collaborate with Grace Ann, and she kind of does check ins with our kids to see how we're doing and make sure we're supported. And I've, again, been well educated and enlightened by her viewpoint. Just and her perspective, it's been freeing. So I'm really excited to share that with you today. So hi, Grace Ann.
Hello,
Hey.
it's great to be here, and I'm excited to share some of my wisdom and perspective on the home education system. It's something I'm very passionate about, and something I tend to get on my soapbox about a little bit. And yeah, so I'm excited to be a part of this podcast with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, get on that soapbox because
Yeah,
it's
we're
good.
get up there.
Yeah.
Do you want to just explain a little bit more about Summit West? It's in Calgary, right? Is it out of
Correct.
Calgary? Yeah.
Well, it's in the foothills.
Okay.
So it's just outside, just south of Calgary, in the Foothills County. And it's just a tiny school, private school. And um, they have um, they have a program that is a home ed program. So we don't utilize the school. Their independent school has their students in classroom there. And then the By Design program is the home ed division, which, the facilitators work from home. We meet with our families over video, and we do 2 visits a year. Usually they're in the fall. The first visit is in the fall, and then the second visit is in the spring. And then just in between that time, we're available by phone or video or emails. Just, if parents have concerns or questions and need to check in, or looking for resources or ideas, or they just need to cry. I've had that. That unfortunately. Yeah. This year has been very stressful for some, for a lot of families.
Yeah.
So
Could you
Yeah.
share your background? I'm curious about what brought you to homeschooling and how this happened in your kids and, what's your background?
yeah, absolutely. So I do have um, a teaching degree, so I have my teaching certificate, and um, I taught in the classroom literally 1 year, and then I was pregnant, had my first son, and I think my interest in homeschooling goes back to my university days. I I found in an old box of materials on all my essays and papers and things that I wrote in university. I found a document that I had pulled off of the internet, which I don't even know what internet looked like back then, if it was some sort of weird dial-up kind of thing. But yeah, I'm old. Um, Anyways, it was on home education, and I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. So I did a paper on the different styles of education, and I did some research on home education, and never once thought that I would teach my own kids in that way, because I was still in my 20s and wasn't thinking about kids. Um, But anyways, then when I did have my son, I started looking into the different options and started thinking about education for him, preschool and different things. And we were out for a walk one day, um, in our neighborhood, and I decided to go into a completely different section that I had never traveled down before, and ran into this lady and her two daughters that were out walking in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week. And I asked her, "Oh, you're out with your girls. Do they not have school?" And she's like, "Oh no, we homeschool." And so we walked for like probably 2 hours talking about home education, and I was hooked, like full on. I didn't even have to question it. I couldn't wait to get to the library and pull all the books off the shelf about home education and just geek out on it. And so that was really where it started for me. And I kind of thought I had to set up um, some kind of a presentation for my husband. I thought, oh, I'm going to have to present this whole idea to him. So I got knowledge. I read and I got informed. And then I came to him and I said, "Guess what we're going to do?" And he's like, "What?" And I said, "We're going to homeschool." And he's like, "Awesome." I'm like, "No, wait a second. Don't you want to argue with me?" I'm like, "Ready." I'm like, "So ready for this." And he's like, "No, I think it's awesome." And then my parents, the same thing. They called and I was talking to them. I said, "I'm going to homeschool." And they're like, "Oh, that's amazing. That's fantastic." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, does nobody want to argue with me? I have all this like good,
I made a
you know,
PowerPoint. Yeah.
yeah, seriously, got spreadsheets." Yeah, so that's really, it just kind of happened so organically like that. And I never looked back. It was just, my kids never saw the inside of a school. And
How old are they now? Like, how are they through school?
so my oldest is 21 and my younger son is 17. And I mean, they did eventually see the inside of a school because my oldest, he decided to go to school for grade 10 and was curious, wanted to know what it was like. And I'm like, okay, I've done lots of research and I put a lot of effort into this home ed thing. So you do some research, come to me, tell me why, all the pros and cons of going to school. And so he did, and he was like totally ready. So he went to school for grade 10. He loved it, played rugby, did like construction, like a construction class that he just loved, and had all kinds of friends. They'd have rap battles at lunch and, all the cool things that you do in high school. And then he came to me one day and said, I want to come home for grade 11. And I said, "How come?" And he's like, "I just think I could get this done so much faster. And without all the busy work and stuff." And I'm like, "Okay." So, but I said to him, you need to like prove to me that this isn't just you trying to get out of something. Like you have to be serious about this. So yeah, he decided to come home and he ended up doing grade 11 and 12 in one year and just got it all done. And just,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
really a lot of work. Yeah,
So I think
crazy.
the biggest, this is like I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I know as a parent interested in homeschooling, my my greatest doubt is that whole going through high school, like, is the sustainability on the long term and making sure that, like, can they become a doctor if they want to? Can they become a lawyer? How does that look at the end of the tunnel? So I kind of want to skip ahead and then I want to go back to options and things like that, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, there is that fear that if you homeschool them through high school, that they're not going to get their high school diplomas, they're not going to be able to go on to colleges or universities. And that's not true. Obviously, my older son is in fourth year university here in Calgary, and he's super smart guy, like way smarter than I am. And he is very self-taught. He's really kind of an independent type learner. And so there are different ways to go about getting into university or college. Um, Obviously, the easiest route is once you hit grade 10, start working towards your Alberta diploma. And so how that looks is you get credits for your core courses, and well, all of your courses, but you get 5 credits per core course. And at the end of your grade 12 year, you want to have, I think it's 103 or 105 credits or something. I can't remember, or maybe it's just 100 credits. I should look into that. So yeah, you need your 100 credits, and then you need to have specific courses like the social, you need social 30, which is grade 12 social, um, you know, various sciences that, you can take a social or a science, physics or chemistry 30, and math 30, and English 30. And so once you have those, you can also contact the universities or colleges that you're interested in applying to. And most of them have their information online for admissions, what that looks like. So, what courses are you interested in taking? And then they tell you what courses, high school courses, you absolutely need to have, and which ones are good to have, and what grades you should have, like what average you should have out of high school to access, to even bother applying, really. And so through home education, both my boys have gone through high school, got their diploma, their Alberta high school diploma through home education. And so it's just the school authority that looks after that, reporting on those grades. So, for example, if your child is doing grade 12 this year, and I'm the facilitator, I would report on their grades and see, okay, you've done English 30, and I see your work, I see her work, and know, okay, this is, you've done, she's done like the various essays and novels and the things that are required of English 30. And, we come up with a grade that, and oftentimes as home education families, we get the students involved in coming up with their grades as well. I mean, obviously with math and science and things like that, it's a little more black and white. You can't really, there's no gray area in the grades quite so much there. But when it comes to the English and the social, the humanity type courses, those ones, you can also involve them in saying, okay, well, how do you feel like you did on this essay? Do you feel like it meets these requirements, and does it look good, and does it read well? And, and then they can also help come up with what their grade is. And so then that's submitted to the school, and the principal reports, he puts that into their Q file, or their, into their, I think it's called the DAR, the DAR, the district, no, now I can't remember, academic report. I forget what the D stands for. Anyways, yeah, so then that's one way to go about it, is to just go straight through and do the work that's required for grade 10, 11, 12 to get your diploma. Another way would be to go back as a mature student, and to apply to the universities. I think after 21, or at 21, you can apply to the universities and colleges, mainly the universities, and they could accept you as a mature student. You can go back and upgrade if you want. You could go to one of the, I know in Calgary, there's a Chinook college, and you can get like adult education to get your diploma. Or you can just write your GEDs. You can go into college, and I think they have courses where you can do a little upgrading and then write the GEDs, get your diploma that way. So there's lots of different ways to kind of go about doing it. Some of the universities will even accept you without having your diploma. If you can bring them a portfolio of your work and say, this is what I've been doing for grade 10, 11, 12, and they have somebody who's willing to sit down and look at that and say, yeah, this looks amazing, we'd love to have you in our program, then that's also an option.
So no, you go
I
ahead.
did adult upgrading before I went back to university, whenever that was. 6 or 7 years ago, and I had graduated high school. So even when you graduate, if you've been out for so long, you have to upgrade anyways. So you don't have to worry about that kind of pressure if you don't make it in time or things change as they do. Yeah, they'll make you upgrade anyways,
Oh, interesting.
especially in math and science, right? So I think English classes will always kind of stay the same because literature doesn't change that much, but math and science, you will have to upgrade no matter what your grades were in high school. If you were out of that school system for at least 2 years or more, then you'll have to upgrade anyways. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
And then you finish like 10, 11, 12 in like a year when you do adult upgrading. Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, then, um, so we're parent directed, right? So, we're not following the Alberta curriculum at this time. But if when your kids hit high school, did they transition away from parent directed and into a different model, or is it still parent directed, but with the idea of following is it still the curriculum or is it the outcomes? How does that all work?
Yeah, so it really is more about um, sort of meeting those outcomes, meeting those requirements, but not like I don't want anyone to go and look at the Alberta website and look at those outcomes and have a panic attack because I really have an issue with the outcomes. They're really complicated. They're quite convoluted. I don't know, and they're not written in a way that makes sense, in a way that we typically learn. So I kind of struggle with those, but that being said, they can be a guideline. Now, I think what you're asking is can you still have a loose program, or do you have to start, bringing in all kinds of textbooks and things like that? So how we did it, or how you can do it, is you can use textbooks. You can meet the requirements by just searching online and getting information. Um, One of the things that you could do is get access to the Alberta Diploma exams that are available. The older ones are available online, and just look at what the requirements are for completing those exams, and kind of deconstruct that and work backwards from that. Another thing is you can get the textbooks, like you can get, even some of them are online, the social textbook, the physics and chemistry, and some of the high schools also have online programming that you can see lessons and material that you can use. Um, so that's one way to do it, but you don't have to. It's not like a prescribed method. It's still child-led. It's parent-led. It's you're still driving the way that the kids learn those subjects at the end of the day. So um, I know with my older son, we had used a specific homeschool math program throughout, like from the time he was in grade 1. And so he just used that all the way through high school as well. And it was a little bit more American based. And so by the time he was done that program, he was at college level, about second year college level. Um, and so his math skills were really strong from that. And then he went and just challenged the diploma exams. So he didn't even he had to show that he had done some studying and some work so that we could hand that into our facilitator, who was Elizabeth at the time. And she looked at it and said, oh yeah, this looks great. All these unit tests that he's done to build up to challenging the diploma exam, he's good to go. And so then we just signed him up for that and signed him up for the diploma exam, and then he wrote them. And yeah, so I don't know if that totally answers your question. Like, just
Yeah,
you still have freedom is really what I'm saying.
so you can get there however you get there. So you don't have to suddenly start following this structured regimen in grade 10. You can, as long as those outcomes are met, and oh, sorry, I'm going to choke now. As long as those outcomes are met, then it's fine. However you get there is up to you. Okay.
Yes.
Could you take us through the different types? Like you said, you wrote that paper in your 20s about the different options for homeschool parents. Could you take us through those options and what they all look like?
Well, yeah. So things have changed quite a bit since then, and then they changed again quite a bit when when I had my kids home. And so it's mostly about the terminology. I think the terminology has changed over the years. We used to call how we were homeschooling, we called it traditional, and which really meant we were not following the Alberta program of studies. And that terminology has gone away. And because it meant different things, like in a government sense and a funding sense. Now it's just home education for the government purposes. But when it comes to being a home ed family, that's where you have different philosophies and different ways of looking at how you approach your day, how you approach your year. And so that kind of looks differently for everybody. So some people, like you use the term, I hear you using the term parent led, and then there's child led, and then there's unschooling, and there's eclectic, and there's nature schooling, there's um, almost probably a different term for every family that's homeschooling out there. They come up with their own language around what it is they do. And it means something different to everybody. So even when we say child-led, one family who does a child-led approach is going to look very different than another family who says that they're doing a child-led approach. Same with parent-led and unschooling. Even an unschooling family is going to have a different approach than another unschooling family. And I always called our family eclectic because we kind of did a little bit of everything. We did some little bit of book work. We did a lot of unschooling. We did a lot of nature schooling. We did just, kind of whatever felt right for us and whatever seemed to be my children's passions, their interests. And so again, it was a lot of child-led as well. And I guess for me, it was more, I was just along for the ride. And, I was the one who drove them to their activities and to the library and, paid attention to what it was they were interested in, and then dabbled books around the house so that, with all those interests in them. And yeah, so as far as the different approaches go, I think those terminologies are really very personal and mean something different for everyone. And there is no sort of one prescribed way to do something. Kind of like when you think of attachment parenting, people who take that approach to raise their children, one family's going to do it different than another. And it doesn't mean that one is better or wrong, or, you know, it's just whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Amanda.
Okay. So I just want to ask, like, if your child is, say, really passionate about math, but not so much about English, and you want to obviously cultivate what they're into, but how do you make sure it stays balanced without forcing the stuff they're not so interested in? Or do you just let it go, or do you try to, what would you do?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that is something that I know a lot of families struggle with. That you do have panic when you see, they're really strong in one area, and they spend most of their day, in that pursuit of that passion. Um, and then you worry that the other pieces aren't going to be strong or aren't going to fall into place. And uh, from my own personal experience and from what I see other home ed families experiencing, um, really, they are learning, whether you think they are or not. When they pursue math, they have to read, they have to write, they have to research. As the math gets tougher and it gets harder, they have to go online and search up, you know, different formulas and techniques to approach those formulas, which leads them to um, maybe watching videos. And so all of that is part of the English language arts program. It's communication, it's reading, it's writing, it's researching. So I never want people to feel like, um, because there's strength and passion in one area, that something else is going to fall on the wayside. And when our kids hit a certain age, the really big, beautiful thing about home education to me is not about the subjects that they're learning or the topics that are being presented to them. It's their approach to learning. So they learn how to learn. And once they have that foundational skill of how to go find information because they have a passion for something, maybe it's rocks and minerals, and they're just 3 months of diving into learning about rocks and minerals and just the excitement about it, and they're out searching them and tumbling them in their tumbler, and then looking online and maybe meeting with a lapidary club that meets once a month to talk about rocks and minerals. And so that in itself is them seeking learning, seeking knowledge. And so when the time comes, like you say, you have a student who's strong in math, well, maybe at some point they decide they love writing and they love poetry, or they want to write music. And so they already have all the skills they need to seek out how to do that and how to get informed in that subject. So now they might start reading all kinds of literature, and they're reading about poetry, and they're pursuing that of their own interest, which we all know when you pursue your own interests, that learning is real, that's authentic, and that's the stuff that sticks. So that, like, I don't know if that would
Oh, that
totally
was
allay the fears, because I know that fear is real. I've been through it with my own kids, and it's easy for me to be on the other side and see them. They're moving on in their lives. They're done with the the elementary and high school level learning, and so I can rest easy knowing we did it. We made it. They pursued their interests. They loved what they did. They followed their passions. And are they really strong in all subjects? No, absolutely not. Are they really strong in all areas of life? No. But do they have the skills to get themselves there? Yeah, that I'm 100% confident in.
That's beautiful. And no human is strong in all departments. It's funny in music education, I find the same thing. I am not I don't have a university degree in music, and I teach some of our highest level students, and it took for me to play professionally for in a cover band in town, and I was getting paid and doing all the things for about 6 years before I decided that it was relevant for me to learn how to read music. I was just a straight by ear musician forever. I owned a music school and I couldn't read music. And then at some point I decided I wanted to learn it. So I always work with my students in that way. If they want to, when they get to the point where they want to do it, they will do it, and then they'll see the relevance in it. Otherwise, it's like pulling teeth. It's not fun. And then they hate music because they think that that's what it's about. And it's probably the same with learning, right? If you're doing math and it's like terrible, and then they'll hate math. They get this idea that this is what math is, and or English or whatever, and it's not like that. It doesn't have to be. So it's a really neat, that helps me put it in a framework that I understand. um, uh, so we have, the way I was understood, it was the parent-led idea came from there being like this version of homeschooling where our parent directed, where it's like the family decides what's happening and we don't follow the Alberta curriculum, right? So and when you're assessing us, I'm curious about, for families such as us, when you're assessing us, how are you making those assessments, since we're not really trying to meet those outcomes from Alberta Ed? And then as a secondary question, what are the other options for families who just aren't comfortable with that level of looseness? What other options do Alberta families have?
Yeah, so um, that's the beauty of home ed, is that it really is something that can be um, really custom fit for every family. And I have families that I work with that aren't comfortable with the freedom, that full freedom of education. They do want more structure in their day, it makes them feel more comfortable. I always get them to check in with who that's comfortable for, because if you're butting heads with your kids because you're working within your own comfort zone, but you're not taking into consideration your kids' comfort zone, then you got to check in with that. And so I've had that conversation too with a few families where, you know, quite often, actually, I hate to say this, it's the dads who struggle with letting go of the structure. And it's not, I don't want to pinpoint all the dads, but that's been my experience. They struggle with letting go of that structure. And so what I just tell them is, you you need to honor yourself in this process. And so don't forget that some structure is okay to make you feel comfortable, but recognize that if it's not okay for your kids and you're butting heads and your relationship is on the line and your kids are crying at the kitchen table trying to do math because you're forcing them to do worksheets all day long, then you have to check in with that. You have to question your approach and revisit your philosophy of why you're home educating. And so um, for families that want structure, absolutely. We give suggestions, or a lot of times families go out and seek their own curriculum, their own materials, their own things that fit and feel good with their families, with their kids. And then the families um, who choose a very organic approach, a very relaxed approach, a very child-led approach, those families, it could look like they're playing Lego all day and then going skating or riding their bikes, building forts, maybe fishing, whatever their pursuits are. Um, you know, those are those are highly encouraged, because it's it's where real learning can happen. And but if those kids are, again, if they're not interested in that and the parents are, on the flip side, you've got a dad who wants to take the kids fishing all day, or a mom who wants to take the kids fishing all day, and the kids are like, but I just want to stay home and do book work, I want to read this book and I want to do math. Then again, you have to check in and honor everybody who's involved. But from my perspective, when I meet with families, when I do my check-ins twice a year and do up my reports, really all that is required of me um, is to make sure that there's evidence of learning, and that just really mostly points to language arts and math. Everything outside of that is gravy. It's all good. So as long as I can see that, the kids are understanding the number concepts and they can do some basic math operations, and that's progressing over the years or over the time that I meet them. Same with the language learning. I don't look at a child in grade 2 and say, wow, you can't read yet, this is unacceptable. That is not my job. My job is to support the family and say, it's okay. Lots of kids don't read until they're in grade 4 or 5. There's various levels. The schools, the school system, in its defense, kind of has to put some arbitrary rules and regulations on when kids are supposed to meet those requirements. You know, they sort of say, well, by grade 1, they should be reading, grade 2, they should be this. And in all honesty, that's not fair because we're measuring them against, I don't know, some invisible measuring stick that doesn't exist, because all our kids are different. And even within a family, the kids are different. One could be super strong in math, another kid could be doing flips in the backyard and, you know, climbing trees. And so they all come to their knowledge at different times. And yeah, so when I meet with families, I'm really just looking for those pieces of evidence. Do the kids look like they're thriving? Are they happy in that environment? Are they learning? Is everybody excited to be engaging in this home ed freedom? And when I see that, that's, you know, that's just perfect. That's what I'm looking for. So yeah, and then when I have families who are really heavy on the work or the worksheets or the that kind of stuff, and they seem like a deer in the headlights, you could see them just looking at me like they're telling me all these things, and the kids are telling me all the activities they've done, and then I ask, "Are you guys okay with that much work? Like that's a lot of work." And you know, some of them actually look to me for permission to back off, and they wanted to be told it's okay to not do all this work. You do not need to do 10 math worksheets a day to be successful in math. So then I give them options, you know, go play dice games, card games, board games, you know, those are all math learning. Take your Hot Wheels cars and chart them and make a spreadsheet, a graph, you know, do stuff like that. Take your Halloween candy and put it into a graph, and there's math. So, you know, have some fun, different ways to explore those subjects. So
Can I? Um, those are all great ideas. I'm going to work in all of that. Halloween candy graphs and Hot Wheel graphs. Yeah. What was I going to ask? Oh yeah. So for parents that maybe started in regular public school, but after this last year have made that switch, it's going to be a much more drastic change for them. So things that we're used to, like report cards and parent teacher meetings, and you see how they're progressing and you can kind of see the other kids in the class. So we don't get to do that anymore. So there's, I think, some fear of the unknown of what's happening. Is it all happening? Are they meeting those outcomes? So is there a way that parents can either assure themselves, or, you know, we're homeschooling each other's kids so that we can reassure each other that they're meeting the outcomes? Should we come up with report cards? Should we create some sort of, I don't know.
yeah, so that's a great question, because it is something that I came across when I met with the families in the fall. I did get a sense that probably 95% of the families asked me at the end of the meetings, like the parents would ask me, are we doing okay? Are we doing this right? And I got that question almost at the end of every meeting. And it really did make me realize there's this need for someone to validate that you're doing it. You're doing the right thing. And what I tell people is, as their parent, as their loving parent, you're the best person for the job. You know, more so than a classroom teacher. There are exceptions to that, unfortunately, but those are pretty few and far between. Most parents who bring their kids home to homeschool are the best person for the job. They know their child the best. Their child feels safe and free at home to do those things. But there is that the parents need to know that they're on the right path. And if you feel the need to do report cards, that's entirely up to you. But what I would suggest doing is making it more fun, making it more creative. It isn't a requirement for you to do a report card of your children, but what you could do is like a summary of learning. And it could be in photos, it could be an Instagram kind of, the kids you and the kids put together an Instagram account or some other form of social media that shows the learning that's happening through photos. or you can journal and keep track of the movies that you've watched, the documentaries, the books that have been read either out loud by the parents or alone by the children, audiobooks that you listen to, trips, field trips that you've gone on, or actual trips, things like that, outings and different things. So yeah, you can definitely keep track in that little bit more organic way. That's how I would recommend doing it. Um, and it's also a great way um, to start building your portfolio, just so that, you know, each year you can see the changes, the progress. Even as the prime, you know, usually it's the moms who are the primary home ed parent. There are a few dads, but they are kind of an exception. Um, keeping a bit of a journal for yourself that just even talks about, you know, in February you panicked and you brought out all the bookwork, and then end of February all the bookwork went away and you were out tobogganing. So, you know,
Are
then
you
you can
spying
see.
on us? How do you know what happened in February?
It's a very familiar roller coaster, and honestly, for all you parents out there who are listening, it's a roller coaster that you ride every year. No matter how experienced you are as a home ed parent, you still get on that roller coaster and you drag your kids along with you. And then eventually your kids just kind of go, oh, it's just mom doing the September calendar, let's get her done thing. And then they ride it again in February and they're just like, wow, mom, what are you doing? You know, and they get used to it, and then you back off and you're like, sorry about that, guys. Let's get back to baking in the kitchen and playing outside and playing Lego. And yeah,
I think it's
but
so neat
it
because yeah, you've taught me
yeah.
so much. I have to say, like when the girls got to prepare for their first presentation to you, that felt like a report card moment, right? It was like, okay, we've got to get what did we do and what's been exciting? What were your favorite things? And they were so excited to do their presentation for you. And watching that alone and then having the follow-up meeting with you where you explained to me um, you you've been slowly uncoupling just in that one meeting. You really uncoupled a lot of my belief systems and my own um preconceived notions about education that I'm very loose. Like I think I'm this like super loose flower child. And then, you know, I still had these ideas about outcomes, and I had, you know, even a lot of the things you've talked about now, like we still use workbooks, and I know it's a fight getting the kids to do the workbooks. And so like I know, you know, but each of us have our own version, and that's beautiful. That's what I like about our system is every parent, we honor every parent in doing what they do best and what works best for them and the kids on that day. Um, but it is really interesting because I think in our podcast, we talk a lot about uncoupling from our preconceived notions about how we participate in society as a whole. And I think this is such a big conversation when it comes to not only education, but also how we approach parenting with our children. And even in this conversation, I think back to our two daughters, our 6-year-olds, and they just play and play and play all day. They're happy. They're just so happy playing all day long. Um, and then it's like, we have to go do, you know, your spelling, or we have to go do these things, and then it's all stressful, and you know, we're worried about making sure that they can read, or you know, I know I worry more about my grade 1 child than my older one because I want her to read, and you feel this thing, right? And you have just expressed in such a clear way that that's my own preconceived notions. That doesn't belong to her. That's like my thing. That's my own idea, and that's my pressure, and that's not for her, and that I don't need to place that on her. And so as we're uncoupling from the technology, as Amanda and I talk about, we uncouple from our perceived notions about health and wellness and all these things. I think this is another area where we don't even realize our belief systems are tied into this, you know? So often I'm now what you're saying, I'm catching my own, oh my gosh, these beliefs that are no longer, they're not needed, you know? It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about empowerment, really. And empowerment comes from knowledge and experience. And the more experience you get with this and the more knowledge you have of how it works for other people, and watching your own kids just thriving throughout the day, and the learning that's going on. You know, when they go out in the garage and they start hammering things together, pieces of wood and stuff, that's learning. They're figuring out that, well, I cut the angle on the birdhouse roof wrong, so now the water's going to get in. So, you know, they spend 10 minutes recutting that angle until it's right. So there's a little bit of math and geometry, and you know, there's so much happening, and so much of it we have to, as parents, we have to step outside of the what we were taught, what we know. You know, we all went to school, we were in that system, we come out of it very school-minded thinking, which is not wrong. It's I don't love it. I have my um, you know, issues with it, but for some people that's what fits and that's what works. So I don't want to, you know, knock it. Um, but it's definitely a challenge when you come out. I always tell people, when you're new to home education, you need to detox from school. And for however many years your kids have been in school, that's how many months you need to just leave them alone, let them detox, and then figure out your philosophy in that time frame. Spend time learning about, who am I going to be as a home ed parent? What do I want this to look like? And then if your kids are a bit older and they can have that conversation with you, talk to them, ask them, what do you want? What do you see being a really exciting thing to do? And you know, sometimes you have to maybe just start somewhere, and if it's with books and worksheets and little activities, that's fine, start with that. But slowly, eventually, you might start to come away from that. You might realize that, wow, when they're building their Legos, it's really phenomenal, and let's turn that into a stop motion animated little movie. Let's take all your Lego characters in this city that you just built, and let's make a little movie out of it. Or let's use your Legos as a math tool, or your Hot Wheels cars. Sorry, I have boys, so I'm all, maybe you've got little ponies. Maybe you've got, I don't even know what the little girl toys are. And I hate to even
LOL.
say that there's little girl toys, but you know,
Yeah,
shame on me for being an old lady and saying boy girl toys, but
It's fine.
can I just, sorry, something I learned from Winnie, my daughter, who's 6. So she just had 1 year of kindergarten in regular school, and then, well, not even a whole year, half a year, and then COVID came. So I didn't want her to start in school in those kind of conditions anyways, because I was like, this isn't what school is. Even the best public school isn't the best right now, I don't think, with all these restrictions. But I thought she enjoyed it. And now that she's in this school, in our little homeschool, she's so happy. She doesn't like the weekends. She can't wait to go back to school. But I was talking with her and I said, you know, when you were in kindergarten and the teacher would read to you guys, or whatever she was teaching, however you learned, but you were learning in a group, and that's different than how we're doing it now. And she said, but Mama, that way was kind of embarrassing. And I've learned from her, just from this year, that she really prefers and is more comfortable learning just one-on-one. Even when Ella, Brandy's 6-year-old, wants to join in with us, Winnie's always like, no, this is my work. Like, I think she'd just rather keep it private. And so she doesn't have to worry if she's at the same level as someone else. And it was nice to learn that from her. I wouldn't have discovered that otherwise.
yeah, I think a lot of what you're talking about, I hear that from a lot of parents. And I think, how do I say this without sounding really negative? The school system, I feel, is set up in a way that creates a shaming environment. I wouldn't say that it's done intentionally. It just happens to be that way. And kids are very sensitive to that. They're super hypersensitive to that. We're finding kids have insane high anxiety these days. And I think a lot of it has to stem from that environment where they're feeling inadequate. They're feeling like they don't measure up. Their grades are publicly announced. Their pitfalls, they're judged. They're and it's a pecking order, and it's survival of the fittest in the classroom, and you're pegged very quickly, and kids learn that real
And
fast.
even the flip side of that, so kids that are the star students, they get labeled teacher's pet, or they create their own pressures that they always have to be at the top, and they put that own pressure on themselves. So yeah, I can see that now. And I was in education up until December. I withdrew from the program after all this stuff, and I was like, I'm just going to homeschool my kids. I don't need to work in that system as much as it was kind of my dream for a long time, that you know opened my eyes a lot more to what the other choices are. Yeah.
It's been, I mean, I'm so glad that you made that decision, because now we get to do this.
Now
Um,
we get to talk.
just saying, this is much more fun. Um, Great, but I just have one more question for you. I'm curious about the role of technology. I know that like right now there's a lot of kids doing online learning, and I know you mentioned that your kids did. I think your son did his math. I don't know if that was online. I'm just curious about how do you approach if there's, like, I know my girls like to play Roblox sometimes, and so when they're playing, I told them that they need to keep the speech thing off, so they actually have to type the words in. Like if they're gonna play with their friends and they are playing, they just got to type it in. And I know my grade 3 daughter, she's like loving that. Like I've noticed her spelling has gotten a lot better because she's typing all the time in her little app. And now my youngest one wants to read because she wants to see what her sister is typing to her in the app, so she's really trying to read what's going on in there. But I still definitely have, oh, like, should it be in a book, or like, is it how, is it, and obviously we don't want too many hours on the devices and things like that, but how do you view that?
Yeah, that's a big struggle, finding a balance with um, with technology in our kids' lives. I struggled with that as a home ed parent. Personally, that was a really big, tough one for me. My husband that's his world. That's what he does for a living. He is a techie guy. Oh my gosh, I always tell him, you're gonna find me one day strangled in the basement by all the cables and cords and things that you have everywhere for all your devices. And, it's, and so of course he introduced a lot of that to my boys when they were younger, which I didn't love. But again, it's that piece of how much am I projecting of me onto their world, that I just want them out in nature all the time. Let's just be out in nature. And so we had to find a balance. It was okay, we're going to go mountain biking, we're going to go hiking, we're going to go skiing, but you can also spend time on the computer and play video games. And as they got older, that balance got way harder to manage because they hit their teen years, and that's how they communicate with their friends. That's how they connect with each other. When they're not together with their friends, they're on the computer playing video games or chatting on their phones or Snapchatting or whatever. And so there's a certain amount of, from my perspective, for me, having to let go of control of those things, but reminding them of balance, and that the balance is within them to make that choice. Like, get outside, get some fresh air, make sure you're taking time for you in the day that is away from that technology. So I felt like if I could teach them that balance and give them that perspective, that they would intrinsically bring that about in their own days without me having to knock on their bedroom door. Hey, are you still on your computer? Are you, it's time for you to go. They do it themselves. They go work out, they take the dog for a walk, they get outside, they ride their bike, whatever. So some days it's not a good balance. And I think, oh my gosh, my younger son, especially, he came into the technology a lot more so than my older son. My older son uses it more. Um, it's his tool for school and things like that. But my younger son definitely. So I tried to do like what you're saying with Roblox. we used Minecraft. There was a Minecraft homeschool server, and some woman came up with all kinds of activities that homeschool kids were on Minecraft doing. And that was perfect. It worked. And then we also did some co-op stuff like you guys are doing as well. We met with other families who had various expertise, and we tapped into that with each other. And we had one who did science with the kids, one who did history, and I did the English stuff. And so we tried to get the kids out of the house and do different things. We had different, within our community, there was a home education community. The community center ran home ed programs during the day. And so we did a martial arts through that. And so there's just like, you sort of have to almost schedule some things that get them away from that technology. But remember that the technology is also a huge part of their future, a part of their world that, again, depriving them of it is probably not also a good thing. So, finding ways to make it be like their fun time, dangle the carrot, like you do some of this work, you've got your fun time on the computer, that can also happen, but also using the computer as a tool, learning tool is, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful because it is and I think, yeah, like you said, moving forward as our kids get older, that is a big part of it. And I like the idea of intrinsically teaching them how to guide themselves through that. My daughter was told that she had a gluten and dairy sensitivity a few years ago. And initially I was like, you can't eat anything. And then, oh God, right? And then I reshaped it. And I was like, you eat whatever you want and you notice what feels good and what doesn't. And you make these decisions. It's your body. Why I'm not going to be the police of your body. And now she's amazing. She's like so all over it. And she can definitely eat gluten, just not all glutinous things. And she knows which ones work for her. And she's intrinsically just so powerful about understanding her gut. So I wouldn't have translated that approach to technology. So really getting them to embody, like, how are you feeling after 2 hours of, being on your device? How's your head feel? Just kind of noticing those things. I like that a lot. Amanda, do you have any other questions before I want to touch on visit?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask for people listening if they maybe haven't taken the plunge into homeschooling this year, but might be considering it, right? 'Cause a lot of people are just doing online through the public school. Is there other ways they can learn, like some of your favorite books, or guide them towards where to find curriculum, or just little tips, maybe a couple of minutes that you could give us?
Yeah, so definitely, I think there's lots of books at the library. If that's something that someone's into, um, if you're into reading about home education and things like that. And I'm just trying to think, I've got a resource list here, but I didn't actually put on it books for parents. And I'm not exactly familiar. I know there's books by John Holt, and he writes. He's an older gentleman that has written lots of books on educating our kids in a very holistic way. And then also John Taylor Gatto, Gatto. I don't even think he's alive anymore, but he wrote a lot of books on how the classroom, I think one of his books is titled Dumbing Us Down.
Oh,
So
yeah,
basically his idea is,
Yeah.
putting your kids in school is just dumbing them down. And his approach was really coming out of sort of wartime, and how we used the schools and the school system to create factory workers. The kids who did well were the kids who listened, who did what they were told, who sat when they were told to sit, pick up the pencil when they were told to pick up the pencil, read the book when they were told to read. They were going to make really good factory workers because they were good listeners, good at taking direction.
And soldiers.
And yes, and soldiers, absolutely. So that was kind of his approach. And then there's, oh, remember her name, Llewellyn, I think it is. She wrote a book, The Teenage Liberation Handbook, How to Quit School and Get a Life. And that one, yeah, you know, like if you're a teenager and you're all angsty, that's a book to take out and leave out on your mom's counter in the kitchen and show her. But
What
yeah,
was it
so
again?
there's
Teenagers Liberation.
the
What was it?
Teenage Liberation Handbook,
Cool.
How to Get a Life, or How to Quit
How to
School
Get-
and Get a Life, I think it is. Yeah. Yeah. So those are some that I read that were really, yeah, they were just like very, very, helps you get outside of the box, you know, think outside of the box. And there's also some YouTube videos. Oh, now I can't remember his name. Sir Thomas. Oh, he did TED Talks, not YouTube videos, TED Talks. Oh, I wish I could remember his name. He does a really good job of sort of talking again about home education and the school systems, and he has his sort of theme is schools kill creativity is kind of what his take is. And none of these things are really done in a way that's really harsh and really like, you know, schools are so bad. They're just pointing out the negativity and or the negative side of what those institutions can, you know, what they can do in a sort of detrimental way to our kids. But yeah, and then as far as curriculum, you know, I always recommend when people start home education to not run out and buy a whole bunch of curriculum. If you really have to have something, just buy those books that come out in like July and August at Costco, the complete Canadian curriculum books. Get a couple of those or get one of those for like whatever they are, 10 bucks, 20 bucks. You haven't invested a ton. See if that kind of thing works for you and your kids, and really just give your kids some space to show you what they need, what they're going to want, what their passions are. Because so often kids come out of the school system, especially by the time they've hit grade 4, they've lost that spark, that their eyes are glazed over. They no longer know who they are and what they want and what they're supposed to do in life. They're just sitting there waiting for someone to tell them what to do, because that's what they're used to. And so giving them some space when they come home is really important so that they can reignite their passion and find out what speaks to them and what gets them out of bed in the morning, you know? So
Yeah. Well, our kids just, yeah, like as Amanda said, our kids just want to be at school all day. It's just such a shift, and they just want to learn. They just want to do their thing. Um, they on my day yesterday, it was just like you have an hour and a half of just doing whatever, like work on your projects, and they all like they come up with their little projects and they're all doing it. And Winnie and Ella, our kids, have like had this whole store they created and price tags, and they've created this whole thing, right? And we're just having but they don't even, it's just fun, but they're so self-motivated. And that's the thing that shocked me, I think surprised me going into this, is just how self-motivated they really are. I think we underestimate their ability to light that fire, you know, or to have that fire lit, and they really just naturally do. It's been really cool to witness. Okay, so Grace Ann, you also run Willow in Time Wellness. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and then how people can kind of connect with you on with regards to homeschooling as well as Willow in Time?
yeah, absolutely. So Willow and Time Wellness is my side baby, I guess we could call it. And I have a real passion for um, finding natural healing modalities. And so I use a lot of herbs and a lot of essential oils and other natural remedies to just support the body, support the body's natural, innate ability to heal itself. And so it's not about curing anything. Um, it's not even really about healing something. It's about giving the body the opportunity to heal itself. And so that's what I love doing. I have a consulting business, so I meet with clients, and they're looking for things that might be supportive for arthritis or other muscular aches and pains, sciatic nerve pains, things like sleep issues or gut issues, stress and anxiety. Yeah, so lots of that kind of stuff. Just even immune boosting, like just incorporating um, different herbal powders into your day to boost your immune system. And so obviously with COVID right now, I'm mostly, open to meeting with people online, like we could do video consultations and things like that. So that's my little side hustle. And that's at willowandtimewellness.com. And then I have, you can reach me at the Summit West website has the information for the home education program that is called By Design. And yeah, so that's at Summit West. Actually, is it summitwest.com? I can't even remember what the address is because I never have to go there. I'm there. Yeah, so you can find me at Summit West, and under the By Design Home Education tab, there will be a list of the facilitators. Actually, I don't know if they've updated it. We have 2 other facilitators that we hired on this year because we started off with 75 students and ended up with 270. So
Wow.
it was a big growth year. So
I was going to ask that question. So yeah, thank you. I wanted to know how. I knew obviously the numbers had increased for homeschooling this year, and I was wondering, yeah, when you just heard that.
yeah.
It must have like quadrupled.
Yeah, it was a really big influx, and I'm sure we'll have some that will go back to the school system, and we've had a few already kind of say that that's their plan for September, and that's totally fine. We obviously support people in whichever path they choose. Obviously for me, I get on my soapbox and I want everyone to be a home educator, but
Yeah, I
it's
heard
not.
someone had done a survey just on their Instagram, like someone who already does homeschool. And I think the number was at least 20% will stick with it after this year. Yeah. So that's just the people that answered that survey, but like it's definitely, there's going to be an increase for sure.
Right. And I think just from my families alone, I maybe have so far maybe about 10% that are going back into the system, and the rest are still intending on staying. So I'm hoping it stays that way. I mean, there's still lots of time between now and September, and lots of things can change. And, there's, different things that are going to come into people's path that drive them in different directions. So I just want to make sure everyone's supported on that journey.
I also want to say that we live in Edmonton. You don't have to be a Calgary family to attend Summit West by Design program. You just have to be an Alberta based family. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just Alberta. Yep.
And there is funding. I do want to drop that because that was a selling point to my husband that helped the transition. Can you just give us a lowdown on how much it is? I don't want to get it wrong per child.
Yeah. So families, each child in the family that is of school age and is registered with a home education program they are entitled to $850 per child. And so you don't just sort of get that money. You actually have to spend it on things that you're going to use in your program. So all the families do have to do up a program plan at the beginning of the year that just kind of gives a loose skeleton structure of what their year is going to look like. You know, are you thinking you're going to use some math curriculum? You don't have to say specifically what that math book is going to be. Like, it doesn't have to have a title, but maybe you want to buy some math books, or you're going to purchase an online math program, or you're going to go on some field trips, you know, musical instruments or music classes or tutoring. So you put those things into your program plan. And then when you purchase those things, you keep those receipts and you submit them to the school, and the school, through the government funding that the school gets, reimburses the families back for those things. So, you know, obviously it doesn't cover things like a limo ride to the zoo, or, you know,
Yeah.
babysitter and a bottle of wine when you go out for dinner with your partner, or things like that. But yeah, it, you know, you're not going to buy a new TV or a dining room table or whatever it happens to be. It's program related items, and you know, it might even be ski pass. So you're taking your kids to do downhill skiing, and you know, you buy a pass. It doesn't cover the parents' pass, but it does cover the child's. So yeah, as long as you have it in your program plan, it's all good. If it's not in your program plan, we are very comfortable with touching up the program plan and adding those things, so that because we know that the year is very fluid, and the things that you plan to do at the beginning of the year might change, and things might drop off, things might get added on, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, I ended up buying an indoor like plant garden thing with grow lights, and so me and the girls take care of the plants, and then they cook and they use the herbs and to cook with it. So that's been a really fun. It's benefited our whole family, and we're learning about, you know, taking herbs from seed to the plate, right, which has really been fun. So um well, thank you so much, Grace Ann. Honestly, this continues to be enlightening and changed my view and opened me up to some self-realization, and how this can be go beyond being an educational journey and into like a soul's journey to understanding these constrictions and these ideas. I really like, I want to play with that more. I think it's every time I talk to you, I feel like, oh my gosh, there was something else that I was attached to that I can work on, you know, practice and play with. So thank you. And thank you for all of your support. I appreciate it.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
welcome. And yeah,
I just wanted to thank you. So thank you. It was great having you on. This has been a great, it's only our second episode, but it's my favorite so far. It's really good. I really enjoyed talking to you. I feel better going forward. Yeah, and I hope we can help others too, because it's a scary transition at first. It still is sometimes, but it gets better, and with support, it makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for inviting me on this. I feel very honored to be able to speak about this topic that I feel very passionate about and very strongly about. And so having a platform where I get to, you know, say my piece is pretty special for me. But honestly, I really, I feel excited anytime I get to have an opportunity to empower other people on this path, so that they feel less like it's a daunting, scary path. You're not going to need to wear a moo dress and have 20 cats following you. That, you know, whatever image you have of a home ed family or a home ed mom, throw that out. And yeah, I mean, we might shuffle around in our pajamas some days, but you know, it's we're all pretty normal. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you for
so
saying that. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wearing pajamas all the time is a great benefit. It's been a good part. I like that.
And
Well,
I also, sorry, I can't get enough of you. I just think it's so lovely. And of course, like everyone we're meeting on this path, you're also into wellness and helping people through natural remedies and just healing their own bodies themselves, which is something me and brand you do. So of course, we just meet on so many levels. That's really cool. And I'm happy to check out your website, Willow and Time, right? So
Yeah, we'll
very
share.
cool.
And we'll bring you back. We'll probably have more questions as we go, and hopefully closer to September, maybe in the summer, we can do another chat just about what the next
Get
year.
ready. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, because that does get kind of scary when you're approaching, by July, August, people start to go, oh, I have to think about school and what we're going to do. And yeah, so I'm happy to come back on and chat some more.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording, but thank you so much,
Okay.
everyone, for watching. And thank you to Grace and Post.